Is it crucial to have multiple projects going at once?
Yes.
Why?
Because like salmon going upstream, a few will get up there. I mean, you have to, one script's not going to do it, as I always say. One script eventually does open something. Like for me, my spec opened the door for assignment work with the company, and I continued on with that. But if you just focus your energy on one thing, it's a lot. It's, you know, the odds that it's going to get you. You have to be constantly. Then that was my problem. I'll share with you when I sold my spec, I didn't have a follow-up. And that really was a problem, because I thought, here I am, and there was no follow-up for a while, and that was my mistake, because I wasn't thinking in those terms. You know, it was early on in my pursuit. You know, I just graduated from college, and you know, was not thinking in that structured, like, okay, what's my game plan here. And I knew a friend who went to film school, and he directed a movie that he wrote, but he didn't have a follow-up. They spent so much time on this movie, and it was a feature, and he didn't sell it. It didn't get picked up by anyone. He paid money to show it in a theater, and okay, what else do you have? Nothing. You know, so you constantly, as I say in the book, you have to have ideas, that you have to have log lines that you're working on. Then you also have to have some treatments or one sheets, which are a lot easier to do than write a complete screenplay. And then you also have to have your screenplay that you're working on. But constantly, when you go into a meeting with your spec that gets you the meeting, they're not buying that spec. They just want to meet you. Say, oh, I can see your ability. And then they say, what else you have? And you don't want that to be, well, I'm working on something and it's going to take me 6 months. I'm not going to see you for 6 months, or you're not going to be on my radar for 6 months. You want to say, I have this other thing. You don't want to bring, you know, a suitcase full of scripts, but you want to say, I have this other thing. Oh, well, after the meeting, send it over. Bam. You know what I mean? You have to have multiple projects in the marketplace, I think, at all times, because not all of them, and maybe not one of them, but that's what you're up against, is to be, I don't want to say a machine, but you know, you can't be precious with, oh, I'm only working on one thing for 5 years. And if you have the luxury of doing that, that's great, but you better have a day job that pays, you know, if you're, you know, I didn't want to wait tables the rest of my life, you know. So what motivated me to get out was continuing to write and create, you know. So yeah, I think it takes more than one project, you know.
I know you do a lot of speaking events, is that right?
I do.
Yeah. So when you have writers approach you, either afterward or even if you see them at a mixer or something, and you know when people ask you for advice and you give it and you can see that they're disengaging because they don't want to hear the answer?
Yes.
What are some of those points when you're talking, they're saying, hey, how do I break into the industry?
Because their experience will be different than mine, which it will be, but their experience will be like, oh, it's not going to happen to me. Like I said, multiple projects in the marketplace, you know. And so when people do that, I just say, I don't want to expend any more time bestowing any sort of advice, you know, because what's the point if you're going to... Example, a friend, I did a favor for a friend. I said, oh, my friend wrote this TV pilot. Okay, I'll meet with him. Now I consult, you know, on my off times, you know, on screenplays and whatnot. I have a consulting business.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But I only do it when I'm not working, you know, because it's not, you know, the real jobs are the assignment jobs. So in the down times, I open it up and say, you know, shop's open, you know. Yeah. So I said, I'll do this as a freebie, as a favor. And a lot of times it stings you and bites you, and you know where. So I went to meet with this guy at Starbucks, and he brings in a giant screenplay, and I go, what is this? He goes, it's a TV pilot. I go, okay. And he starts dropping names of people who I know that are going to give him an office in the thing, and I was like, they're going to give you an office? What about me? You know, it's like, so I said, okay, I'll read it. So I went home, and there were 10, I'm not kidding you, 10 issues on every page, from typos to format to whatever you want. And so we met again, and I was really doing my friend a favor. We met again, and he had an excuse for every one and wouldn't listen. And he said, well, I'm going to chop it in half and make it the thing. I said, okay, interesting. And still went on and on, dropping these names about people who I know are somehow going to bring him in and give him a desk in an office. And I was just like, I can only do so much, you know, good luck to you, and maybe I'm wrong. I doubt it, but okay. People who don't want to listen, it obviously shows their ignorance, and I'm not trying to be malicious, I'm just trying to say, hey, you know, I wish somebody had done that to me. And, you know, then it would save me a lot of time, and time is what keeps clicking away. You know, when you make mistakes, why spend all this time making these mistakes when you could do it right? You know, or go down this path. Everyone has to learn, hopefully they do. But yes, I've experienced that where people just tune off and they're like, oh, okay.
And is that around the time when you say it's going to take several scripts, it's going to always have multiple things so that if somebody wants to see?
That's why I went to talk at a high school. My friend's a teacher, to their film class. And one of the kids raised his hand and goes, have you written any big movies? I go, how long do we have on this? Yeah. So we went through the thing, and you can just see all this, they're not going to, you know, but the few film nerds, which I was one growing up, after it was over, they came up, 3 or 4, you know, came up and said, oh, and they wanted to look at a script and talk to me direct. Everybody else couldn't wait to leave. And I just thought, interesting. I was making films when I was their age, you know, doing that. And they can do whatever. Maybe they weren't interested. That's okay. But I always say, you'll be humbled. If you're not humble now, the craft and the business will humble you eventually, where you say, oh, my one script. And then you learn that, you know, after 35 screenplays, either you're still learning, which you should be, and it takes a lot to get one. That's why the multiple projects thing is important, to have multiple projects going at each time. And that's to say you have to write 2 projects, but always have something. You finish one, you're working on another. Don't leave these long gaps, you know, of nothing, and you're out there. And my spec that I sold, it took 7 years, but that wasn't my only thing I had. I wasn't running around town with this one spec. I continued on doing other things. I was in a sketch comedy show. I was doing proactive things at the same time. But the only problem is that once it's sold, I didn't have a specific spec like in the same genre where they could say, what else can I look at? Or things weren't ready. You know, that's important too, to have those other things ready. Because like I said, if you have that meeting and they say, oh, send over something, you don't want it to be 6 months later. You want it to be, you know, immediately.